Retail has been disrupted. There's lots of evidence of that. Retailers who haven't even been a part of the conversation a year ago are dominating it today. And retailers who've been around for decades are seemingly closing their doors overnight. So what is happening? At Ideo, we get curious. So we work across a lot of different industries, most of which care intensely about the way people shop and the way people buy. And because of that, we get to see patterns. So what we'd like to do today is share with you 4 stories that have inspired us to think differently about consumers, shopping, and retail.
Thanks. So for our first story, we want you to meet George. And George is someone that at Ideo we would call an extreme user. He has, he exhibits a lot of early adopter behaviors, and he is someone who has a really strong point of view or really strong attitude about something. And what we like about extreme users is that they're able to articulate that in a very crisp and concise way, which is something that might still be a bit foggy for the average person, or might just be an emerging behavior in an average person. So when we go to George's house, it's full of all of these beautiful things, and we ask him, if your house was burning, what would you take with you on your way out? And without hesitation, he pointed to these pictures on this wall and said it would, without a doubt, be these pictures. For each one of them has like a really meaningful story behind it for him, and more often than not, he actually knows the artist behind it personally. So you could really say that, in a way, George is making friends with his personal possessions. So when we look, for us, what's exciting about George is it really points to this latent need in consumers. And that is that they have to connect, many people like George have to connect personally to the person behind, the creative person behind the possessions that they own. And when we look out in the world, we can see a lot of examples of people doing a great job of this. You know, Etsy has been doing this for a few years now, creating a marketplace where creative individuals can connect with people like George without a middleman. And what's exciting is to see someone like West Elm take it a step further and showcase those creative individuals through a curated collection of Etsy artists in their catalog and in their stores. So this is her name is Whitney Smith, and she's a potter in Oakland, and she's being featured in the West Elm Palo Alto. So it's major retailers like West Elm that have figured out that they can really connect with their core audience by introducing them to some new emerging talent. So you could really say that West Elm, in a way, is helping us make friends with our possessions and with the designers behind them. And this isn't just happening with West Elm. We see this with here in San Francisco, the Curiosity Shop, where they've done a great job for years of collecting all of these objects that they're really passionate about, and it's gotten them noticed by Target, who has recently invited them to share a select collection in Target stores all over the country. So all of this really has us thinking. When we look to retailers, we have to ask, who is the creative talent immediately in your midst? It's very likely that there's actually emerging talent within your organization, people who would bring new relevance and meaning to your brand. So how could you showcase those in your store in new and meaningful ways? So for our second story, we want to introduce you to Adam. And Adam is also like George. He's not your average person by a long shot. And in his case, it's because he's obsessed with tools, as we found out. Adam is, when we travel the world, we all have a different lens by which we experience foreign cultures. For some, it might be history. For others, it's food. For me, it's architecture. But for Adam, it's really, it's tools, it's craft, it's how those cultures make things. And so he's assembled this incredible collection of brushes. And he was telling us all of these stories, like of this one in the middle here where all of the bristles kind of are spun together until they form this singular handle. He found it in Japan. And it's this quirky collection of brushes that for us points to the fact that Adam is suggesting a latent need where some consumers have to connect to their possessions through the process by which they were made. And for Adam, if you break that connection, all of those objects somehow feel inferior to him. So again, looking out around the world, you can think of a lot of people who are doing a great job right now of connecting with the atoms of the world. Like one of the ones we're excited about is Sarah and Victor Litvinenko. They've created Raleigh denim. And so they basically took their passion for a tool. They had a really old chain stitch hammer that was indestructible. And they were also really excited about this denim that was made in a mill in a town near where they lived in North Carolina. And they started making jeans again in their workshop. And you can see this passion come to life in every pair of jeans. They're signed by the person who sewed them together on the inside pocket. It's incredible to see that even today they've opened a store in New York City, and they're still connecting people to that sort of very tangible experience of their workshop as they continue to scale up. And it's not just Raleigh, a ton of people are doing this. We're excited about seeing things like the Burberry flagship store in London, where they're using video technology to allow the story of their leather bags being made. Or Smitten Ice Cream here in San Francisco. You can watch raw ingredients become ice cream in front of your very eyes. And then, Tech Shop, also in San Francisco, it's exciting to see that if you take prototyping tools and give them to people, you can watch the emergence of new companies like Dodo Case or the credit card reader Square. So all of these stories of the maker, they really grab us. Whether it's their town they're from, their method, the tools that they use. How can we capture that opportunity? And for us, it really begs the question: how can you bring that to life in your store, where we think that consumers are most likely to sort of resonate with it?
On to the third story. On a recent design research trip, we came across the Moms of Beverly. This is not a reality show. Beverly is a suburb of Chicago. It's close-knit, it's middle class, and it's full of shopaholics. So 4 homemakers decided to create a closed Facebook group called the Moms of Beverly. And what emerged is what you could pretty safely call a small economy of around 2,000 members who buy and sell to each other. And they're self-run, they're invite-only, and central to all of this is a really deep interest in each other's favorite products, in favorite brands, and sometimes they might even choose to boycott a brand or a product altogether because they just don't believe in it. And you can imagine, in a community as close-knit as this, where you can run into each other at the grocery store, the level of accountability is pretty high. Nothing's worse than dirty looks in a grocery store. Mm-hmm. So the reason why we are really interested in this micro-community is they're motivated by something a little bit deeper and a little bit more complex than the joy of personal consumption. For example, they're deeply motivated by the idea of shopping as an act of caring for friends and family and providing for your family. And there's also this idea that your experience of a purchased good actually makes you wiser and makes you more useful to your friends and family and neighbors because you can trade with them and you have more information to share. And what's most intriguing to us about this is, the level of honesty and truth in these conversations is pretty phenomenal, yet retailers, brands have zero access to it, and they can't learn from it, and they can't do anything about it. So it makes us wonder, how many other Moms of Beverly's, closed Facebook groups are there out there? And how might you unlock the power of existing communities who are already interested in your brand and having that conversation? And what would it take for your store to become their new headquarters? On to our last story. Christine and Kate are 2 designers at Ideo, and theirs is a really simple story to tell. Christine wore a necklace from Madewell one day to work. Kate loved it, asked her where she got it, went out and got one for herself, and now when they see the necklace on each other, they have a little laugh. And this is such a common story. It happens all the time. We barely even think twice about it. But there's no denying the enormous power and influence an owner has on a shopper. And by owner, we simply mean someone who's already made the purchase and they're using the product. And we should all be able to relate to this. You know, at some point in our lives, we've probably influenced someone else's shopping, or we've probably been influenced by someone who is using some really cool new product or wearing something amazing. Kind of, as consumers, we're actually really interested in each other's decisions and experiences. It's actually quite natural. You know, 85% of customers are not only interested in owner reviews, they trust them. These are reviews written by complete strangers. And owner reviews impact buying decisions over 80% of the time. And even the amount of time that we're taking reading these owner reviews is ever increasing. And companies like Needle.com are doing such a great job of leveraging the power and the growing influence of owners. So if owners are arguably the single most influential figure in the entire shopping journey, and their presence abounds online in the form of product reviews and opinions, they're not present in the store. Or if they are, they're really hard to spot. And they're certainly not playing a key role in that physical shopping journey. So how could you offer an experience that attracts owners back to the store so that they could actually inform and inspire new customers? So 4 stories in quick succession. What's the pattern? At a meta level, we see a shift of emphasis from big to small. We're finding that consumers and brands are finding it easier and more meaningful to connect at a pretty small scale.
So what do we mean by this? Well, you know, originally, it was really about taking an individual, connecting that individual directly to a product. You know, convincing them to say, I want to buy this. Then later, it was about connecting that individual to a brand. You know, I believe in this story. And more recently, it's been about connecting an individual to a community of like-minded individuals who you know, share some common aspiration. You know, I want to be a part of something. So where are we now? Well, we believe that it's about connecting an individual directly to another individual. We've basically gone back to one of the most fundamental connections that we can find.
That's right. So an individual with another individual. So that could be connecting a consumer with his friend or neighbor. Or it can be about connecting a consumer with the individual whose hands made that product. Or it could be about connecting a consumer with the creative genius behind a product. Or about connecting a consumer with the owner of a product who uses that product in really interesting and inspiring ways. And so perhaps the biggest opportunity and responsibility of retailers is to forge that deep connection between the consumer and the friend and the creative and the maker and the owner, and to find really new and interesting ways of doing that in the store. This is really exciting for us because we feel like this presents such a rich space full of opportunity. And you can start by asking a few simple questions. So, you know, there are no organizations or brands. You know, companies are a collection of talented and unique individuals. So how do you shine a light on the creative talent and the makers behind a brand?
Yeah, another question we've been asking is, you know, like how do you, you know, when you're in a store, how can you intentionally design it to connect shoppers with valued owners? You know, if you can recognize those owners as opposed to, you know, just people who are stopping in, if you can keep track of them over time, and if you can actually give them a real value that keeps them wanting to come back, you can create this really powerful connection.
And then ultimately, if it is about an individual craving a connection with another individual, service design could be the ultimate proving grounds for a brand in a store. So we want to leave you with this final question. Could the customer service in your store be even more important than the product on the shelves? And could service ultimately be the most single strategic asset that you could wield in the store? Thank you.
Thank you.